the reason our relationship succeeds is because we like chalk and cheese. We really are. She likes to watch TV. I like to watch politics. I love her. She loathes me. Oh, there you are, Freedom.
Hi, mate. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm a little bit happier today after the events of the last few days. You know, the nonsense we had, but there is peace in our time.
There is, mate. There is. Us right wingers can always come together when we need to, mate. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
we do
I'm just,
indeed, Freedom.
Paul. I'm just glad that we're having a break, mate. You know what I mean?
I All I really want to do is sit in front of the fire and have a cup of hot chocolate.
Yeah, hi, mate. I know. I know. I get like that. I get like that. Can you hear me all right? Aye.
Perfect, perfect.
Happy days. I've got the headphones in. So yeah, it's been quite an eventful week, hasn't it?
It has been on the mainland, I can tell you. It really has been.
Yeah,
But
just in.
we we've got a fragile peace, which is sort of good.
It sounds a bit like the Troubles.
That's what frightens me, Freedom Dad, is the troubles.
Yeah,
Because you know and I know. And I don't want to see the barriers going up all over our towns and cities where we have to be searched to get into a shop and stuff like that, or where you have to watch the door again. You know
I
what
know.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, mate. I know. I know. But yeah, it's good to see everybody back on track again. Um, Vindicator getting 10,000 subs. That's amazing.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember hitting 10,000 subs, and it is a big achievement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, just getting started is a big achievement. And I know I've said thank you in the past, Freedom Dad.
yeah,
Your channel helped
yeah,
get
I
me.
know, I know. But that's you put in the hard work, mate. You know what I mean? It's like I just gave you a wee hand up. It was you had actually climbed over the wall. You know what I mean? And it's just one of them things, mate. I do believe that, like, this is the time for us. This is the time for right wing commentators, YouTubers. There's people out there that are fed up with TV, fed up with Sky News, GB News, Channel
Oh,
4, and they're looking somewhere to get the real news, and they're coming online. And we've got to be ready for them. You know what I mean? I've been saying that to my community for a wee while. We have to be ready. There's going to be more and more coming, and it's good that we get all this, out of the way. And you know, whoever's right and wrong, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. There's bigger fish to fry. You know what I mean?
oh, oh,
Um,
yeah. We had someone from the Republic of Ireland in the other day. Oh God, his name escapes me. If I tell you that his language was less than Shakespearean, I asked. He said he knew you, and I said, "Well, please give my regards to Freedom Dad." But
right.
he was talking about unity, and he spoke about you going to Dublin. Yeah, he
Yeah.
spoke well, and people loved
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah, I have got a lot of friends there. Sorry, I'm just out of the shower, so I am. For fuck's sake. Um, I had a wee drink last night, mate. You know what I mean? So,
I have a wee
we,
drink every night.
I couldn't do that every night. You know what I mean? I couldn't do that after last night and at the weekend there. You know what I mean? I sort of wore myself out a wee, but I'm not used to it, Paul. I'm not used to it, mate. You know what I mean? I'm
He
not a
should have
big
joined
drinker.
the
What's
should have
that?
joined the Royal Navy. Should have joined the Royal Navy.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
But
really drink. It's only rum. I only drink rum, which is sailor's blood, isn't it? So
well,
it's like
yeah. I
keeps
like
me
my Guinness.
going.
I like my Guinness. But no, it's good to see you getting some of the Irish boys on. You know what I mean? Like I say, it's a difficult one, because I've had a couple of Irish boys on my channel, and a couple of Irish boys have came down from Southern Ireland into Belfast, covering the demos. They've come down to our demos, and I've interviewed them, and they've took a lot of flack. They've took a lot of flack,
I bet
you
they
know.
have.
But the thing is, it seems to be the most discerning voices. The haters seem to do more damage online than actual people in the street. You know what I mean? And that's what I try to tell people. You know what I mean? It's very easy for a group of haters to go online and hate and call us names and talk about the IRA and talk about United Ireland and how they hate Freedom Dad and how Freedom Dad's just a loyalist. But the real judge of it all is when Freedom Dad's on the street in Southern Ireland, in Dublin, amongst the Irishmen, and I get nothing but love. So that speaks
I,
volumes.
yeah, that does speak volumes, Freedom Dad, but you and I both know that down in the Republic and in the North, there's still men, dangerous men, right, who don't want to see unity.
Of
And,
course,
you're in
of
danger,
course.
my friend, probably
Uh,
more so than I.
yeah, well, listen, I don't know anybody around me that wants a united Ireland. I'll be honest, I'm a Protestant unionist loyalist, and I'd be lying if I was to say, oh, there's guys in my community want to see united Ireland. Maybe there's one or two that can't be asked with anymore, but I can assure you the majority of us men in Ulster want to remain part of the United
Of
Kingdom.
course,
And,
yeah.
and and it's not just about the past, it's also about the future and where Ireland's gone in the last few years with the EU. There's Catholics now that don't want a united Ireland. And a lot of people
Oh,
go, but I'm telling you, I get so many messages from the Catholic community in Northern Ireland, and they're distraught at Ireland and what they've
yeah,
done and what the government's done to them, to the Irish people. It's a wee
I
bit
can.
like us. It's a wee bit like, I'll be honest, we like as a unionist looking at the Parliament and looking at the government and seeing so many Muslims in power, seeing Starmer and like the front bench, Cooper and all the rest of them, you know what I mean? Rachel from accounts and that other header. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it does, like, we're looking at the union right now and thinking, or at least the English government, and going, they don't represent us. There is unionists like looking at the union right now. So it works both ways. There's Catholics looking at Ireland going, that doesn't represent us. There's unionists looking at England going, that doesn't represent us. Like, obviously we know there's going to be change. We're good because we're going to help the change. You're like, you and all the other YouTubers and everybody on the right wing commentary are going to make this change happen one way or the other. There's don't if it doesn't, then the union's fucked. You know what I mean? Pardon my French, but it is, mate.
No,
I don't know how long Scotland. I mean, the last time there was an independence vote in Scotland, it was 51-49. And if I'm as a unionist, a loyalist in Northern Ireland is looking at England right now and going, well, that government doesn't represent me anymore. God knows what they're thinking, and the unionists in Scotland are thinking. You know what I mean? And it won't take much to tip that over to an independence. But that's if they mean independence. The last time when they went for an independence vote, they were wanting to leave the British Union and join the European Union. So there was no independence at all. You know what I
no,
mean?
man, greater enslavement. No,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it seems to me, and you probably agree, Ulster, Northern Ireland, has always been ignored by the British government, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's over the water. We are more concerned with this than they face. And so you were betrayed, weren't you, with the Windsor framework and the rest of it?
Hmm,
That
hmm.
that should have been an ill that we were prepared to die on. That should
This
have
is
been
the most,
sorted out.
Paul, this is the most damning time for us. This is the most concerning time as unionists. I don't think any of my mates, even the ones that are older, can ever think of any time in our history where we have been, everything's looking really, really bad. We've got Labour government who would quite happily give up the six counties. Quite happily just fucking hand it back. You know what I mean? Or hand it over to Ireland. You know what I mean? Quite happily
Oh,
fucking you know, like they don't care. You know what I mean? We've got, like I say, it's been like the government in charge right now. They're not a British government, mate. They're not
no,
British.
they're
They're not
puppets, aren't
British.
they? They're
Yeah.
puppets. I mean, the people of Ulster, the people of the Republic of Ireland, the people on the mainland have said we don't want to be replaced. We don't want everything you inflict on us. And they quite simply they don't care, Freedom Dad. They don't care what you
Hmm.
think. They don't care what I think. They've got their agenda. They've got orders, and they're going to carry them out. And so
Hmm.
we've got to resist them by all means possible.
Yeah. And then on top of that, with the government, then we've got the king. Has a royalist. As you can imagine what we're like over here. You know what I
Oh,
mean? And we've got murals of the king. and
Yeah,
people are starting to question them rules now being up on our walls. I can also tell you something that not many people know, but I'm not going to go into detail. But there's an organisation in Scotland right now that's close to Northern Ireland who don't no longer stand for the king, and that's unprecedented. I'm talking about these guys. You know who I'm talking about,
yeah,
but I can't
I
say too
do.
much.
I do.
But whenever they have their meetings and their dues and everything, that they play the king, and everybody's got to stand, in the orange halls and all the rest of it. You've got to stand. If you get fucking told off if you don't stand for the king. We're now in a situation where some guys in some areas are refusing to stand for the king. Has altogether, like, and like it's quite remarkable. But this is the sign of the times, mate. Things I've never thought I'd ever see a day when I'm looking at the union the way it is, seeing a government full of foreigners, foreign nationals, like at Mahood being the Home Office, being a Justice Minister, then the Home Office, and then that other header, Education Minister. You could go on, and then you've got Anwar as the Labour leader, and that other header was in charge of the SNP. Complained everybody was white. It's just remarkable times. It's really remarkable that and that's what I always say to my guys in my
Wow.
community. We're living this. This is, but people
Yeah.
see, because it's happening right in front of your face, people sort of get accustomed to it, acclimatized to it. But what I try to keep reminding people is this is a one in a lifetime, one in many lifetimes. You know what I mean? We're living this. We are the only ones that are our generation now, before, and tomorrow are going to go through this. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
nobody else going to go through this. But we're living something that nobody's seen coming. We're living a replacement, an Islamification, our king not representing us, not like putting Islam before Christianity, as far as I'm concerned. Bringing Islam, call to prayer in Windsor Castle. You know what I mean? Jumping about, wearing fucking, behaving in a very, very unchristian way, and not representing the people of the country. And like backing up that Islam is the religion of peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Whenever we know that in one year they committed 25,000 terrorist attacks around the world between
Oh yes.
ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram,
Yeah.
Hamas, just to name a few. So, for any person like a king of a country who's a Christian king to tell us that Islam is a religion of peace and we should accept that, something's wrong. Something is
Yeah.
wrong.
Well, as Lady J and I just said, she not her king. I don't see him as my king either. But for Ulstermen to turn against the king,
Hmm.
that's I've never heard of that before.
No,
Never.
it's
They have
unheard of.
always been the most loyal to the throne of us
Yeah,
all. I
yeah,
mean,
and
when it comes
yeah.
to spirit, the Ulstermen have got it.
Yeah, and it has a commentator, has somebody who is a journalist, a citizen journalist from a community. I report on what I see. I report on the feelings on the street, what people talk to me. I talk to people in the mainland, Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland, and Northern Ireland, but not leaving Ireland out right now. When I talk about the king, I do take a lot of flack because there's a lot of orange men in Northern Ireland. You know what I mean? It's one of the biggest institutions that we have, one of the biggest organisations that we have, basically the Orange Order, and they swear allegiance to the king. So they're not happy with me because the way I talk. But like I say, I've told you before, I've got to be honest. If I was to fuck about, not talk, like skirt around the issues and be a skirt to say this and a skirt to say that, there's no point me doing it. You know what I mean?
No.
And like it is difficult. This is how difficult it is. I do get a lot of flack. I have had friends that I've had for a long time that are part of the Orange Order fall out with me. Sometimes when I'm covering the demos, I've had Orange men have a go at me. You know what I mean? But I always live with the assurance that eventually they're going to see what I see. They're going to see that I'm not doing this for the fun of my health. I love the king. I love the queen. I love the royal family. I'm a royalist. I'm a unionist. I'm a loyalist. There's nothing changed, but that's changing. It's changing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not changing. It's that that's changing, and I don't know. We'll see how long it goes before the rest of the country wakes up. and maybe the Orange Men can do something
Well,
because they're a big enough organisation to make waves. You know what I mean?
well, I don't think people realise how powerful the Orange Order is in both
Yeah. Oh,
Scotland and Ulster. Huge.
huge,
Um,
huge.
to lose
They,
the loyalty, those guys are the super patriots. Super
yes,
patriots.
and I think, in fairness to them, they are caught between a rock and a hard place right now. It is really difficult for them, and I know that they're looking at England and they're looking at the king and they're looking at the government and they're going, no, something's not right. But it is what it is. It's customs, it's traditions, it's stuff that's been laid down for hundreds of years, and it's very difficult to change it. And maybe they're hoping there will be change. Maybe they're holding out. I don't know. I don't
But
know.
freedom, Dad. I see. This is how they trick us and trap us. I've always believed in a constitutional monarchy, the king as head of
Mhm.
state. The alternative is a republic, and the thoughts of some complete Tony Blair say being elected as president of the United Kingdom if we were a republic. That's even worse than having King Charles, I
Mhm.
think.
Mhm. Mhm. I don't know what the answer is, mate. You know what I mean? Like I say. I think patriots in Northern Ireland, guys like myself and other guys that are doing what we're doing, is I think we've got the hardest job right now because of not just the division between Protestants and Catholics, but there's also quite a lot of divide in Protestants and stuff like that. And you know what I mean? Like I say, the Orange Order, the paramilitaries, you know what I mean, and other little fractions here and there, and it is a minefield. You know what I mean? Trying to do what we do, fairly and honestly and openly, it does cause you problems. It does cause you problems. Like what I mean, whereas England, the English patriots can, there's nobody looking over them. There's nobody judging them. You know what I mean? Um,
No,
but like I say, I've always said this, and I'll never budge on it. I'm not going to stop. You know what I mean? I'm not going
no,
to stop. At the end of the day, I know some people don't like what I say, but I'm saying it because I love my country. I love my country so much. Um, it's ingrained in me as a wee boy. When my mum brought me up, as being in the flute bands, joining the Orange Order when I was a kid in the juniors, and just living that lifestyle of Orangeism, loyalism, and patriotism. You know what I mean? So it's in my blood. Nobody can
I
question that.
I've seen it. I've seen it, and it's something that I brought back from my time in Ulster was the unity of the Ulster people.
Yeah,
It's incredible, and
yeah,
I've said so many times to friends, we should be more like the Ulster men. We should
yeah.
show our unity. We should stand together. But perhaps we are getting there now under Rupert Lowe.
Yeah, I think you're getting there not just because of Rupert Lowe, but because you've got an invasion going on.
Aye,
You've got a democratic shift, a seismic democratic shift, where you're seeing that, like us Protestants and Catholics, we're looking at Islam right now and going, well, the only difference between me and you, Catholic, is 4 books, 5 books in the Bible. That's it. Nothing else. Fucking
that's
4 or 5 books in the Bible is the only difference between Protestants and Catholics. Compared to
aye.
the difference between us and Islam and all the different fractions like Wahhabi and Shia, Sunni, and all the rest. You know what I mean? It's like, you know,
Eh,
things are changing. There is a unity between Protestants and Catholics, so I imagine there'll be an even bigger unity in England just between Christians, whether it'll be Church of England, Presbyterian, Methodist,
wow.
so
There's a
that,
form there's a form of Anglo-Catholicism growing in the United Kingdom because the Church of England parishioners have become disillusioned with the Church of England because they've gone completely woke and they're
yeah.
looking for a more sort of traditional religion. I
Yeah,
mean,
well, Paul. It's just money. It's money. The heads of these churches, mate, they're not Christians, mate. These people are. It's all. They're just like the government. These people are just like the
yeah,
government. The archbishops. It's all about money, cash, and it's the church is gone as we know it. In Northern Ireland, we have so many different churches popping up now. We've got a lot of ex-paramilitaries who've turned to God and started up their own churches. Like I say, we've got an amazing array of churches that are popping up. all over Belfast. You know what I mean? And it's they're not big churches like you have
No.
like the Methodist and the Presbyterian, but these are smaller churches and there's more of them. So you're not really
Ah,
getting an understanding of how many people are actually turning to God and becoming Christians and following the path of Jesus, you know what I mean, and being that living that Christian life because there's so many and there's no real register or log anymore. But I can
r-
tell you being on the ground, it's there's an explosion of Christianity in Northern Ireland where people are turning away from the big churches because they can see, we've got guys that so like in the EBFD, there's there's like a Christian branch. We've got experts in Christianity. You know what I mean? And they will go and speak to these church leaders and call them out. You know what I mean? And they tie them in knots. They tie them in knots. We have the best Christians in our community right now, working really hard for our country, as patriots. To call out the bigger churches because
oh,
they're not calling out Islam. This is the kicker. They try to say Islam's a religion. This is where you start. Is Islam the religion of peace? Yes, that's where you go, and you just
oh,
tie them in knots. And then you ask them why are you giving out this false information? Why are you pushing this rhetoric that Islam is good when because we've got the evidence now of what happens.
oh, yes.
And it's not being far right and racist. It's facts. We're bringing facts to the table, and then they just start stuttering. They don't know what to say. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. It's about bringing dialogue, bringing the argument, and showing, if possible, filming it. This is what
yeah,
we do as well. Film it and show the people. These are the church leaders that aren't representing the people. They're more representing Islam and foreigners and diversity is good and all the rest of it, and pushing not that the Christian way of being kind and turning the other cheek and all the rest of it. You know what I mean? If a man slaps you in the cheek, you turn the other cheek and let him slap you in the other cheek. No, you don't. You don't.
no.
You know what I mean? Them days are gone. You know what I mean? So if there's a new Christians up and coming, mate, who are true Christians to God, but they're also defenders of the faith, and they're going to
R-
defend it.
that
They're
is
going to defend it.
excellent.
Hmm.
That is excellent news, Freedom Dad. To be honest, I do believe in, if you like, the church militant. I'm not a great believer either in the turn the other cheek. There might be
Yeah.
times, but personally, I think the church should be more militant and speaking out against Islam. There's a
Hmm.
website, you probably know it. It reports what is happening in the Islamic world and the crimes they're committing on a day-by-day basis. And even whilst we are speaking, I can guarantee you that somewhere in the world, Chris,
Hmm.
Chris, sorry to laugh, I just had a message come up from my moderator, and yeah, even whilst we speak, there are Christians dying at this moment in time
hundred
somewhere in the
percent.
country.
Africa isn't as Christians are being persecuted all over Africa, and by Boko Haram, constant. There's I don't even in Iraq, Syria.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? This leader of Syria. And it's not just Christians; it's anybody. Mostly, I think the main faith right now in Islam in these sort of areas is Sunni. They're the main, I believe, in my opinion, for educational and entertainment purposes only. Sunni are the main agitators against other religions because they believe there's only one religion, which is Sunni. If you ever speak to a
oh
Sunni
yeah,
Muslim, they'll tell you that. If you say to a Sunni Muslim, what religion or Muslim are you, and they'll go, there is only one religion, that's Sunni. You know what I mean? When they put the finger up, so it is widespread. You know what I mean? It's non-stop, and
oh,
it's not being reported. And the reason why it's not being reported is because all our newspapers, all our media, our government, and our king are telling us that they're a religion of peace. So why would they report the horrific crimes that Islam is actually committing around the world? Because it would show
yeah.
them all to be liars, and then people would be like, "So why are you saying that?" You know what I mean? So it's down to like me and you and the rest of the YouTubers to bring this kind of information to our platforms and show the government and our king out to be what they truly are. You know what I mean? And I believe, I hate to say it, especially about my king, but I feel he's behaving in a very traitorous way right now. You know.
I wrote about him whilst he was still Prince Charles years and years ago, calling into question his loyalty to his country, to his subjects, and to the Christianity. But I've done a video when I just started. People say the Muslims, and they just think that there's just one branch of Islam. But as you
Hmm.
know yourself, there are multiple branches of Islam, and they hate each other. The Shia
Hmm.
hate the Sunni, and then there's all the different other
Kurds,
factions.
you got the Kurds as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
and
So
and and the
if they
Druze,
didn't have
not the
right, and if
Jews, the
they
Druze,
truths, yeah, and
Druze, yep.
if they didn't have Christianity to hate, if there was no other religion except the broad Church of Islam, they would be killing each other.
A hundred
They would,
percent, 100%. You know, I've seen videos, whenever in Syria where they went in, like he just took over, and they were stuff they were doing was horrific, horrific. Running tanks over bodies and all that. You know, people, men that were still like going and ethnically cleansing villages because they
yeah,
weren't Sunni. You know, and this is a man that we give 50 million to as soon as he got into power. This is a man who just met our prime minister and our king. This is a man who had millions a bounty on his head, most wanted man in America. You know what I mean, for terrorist
yeah,
offences, and our king is shaking his hand. Makes sense of that.
we can't. They know. It seems that there are few decent men left in the world at the top. You know,
Yeah,
I look at. I think Rupert Lowe is the nearest man. He's a billionaire. He's a multimillionaire. He seems to have the same values as I, but the, we need more men. If he's genuine, and I've got to believe he's genuine,
no
I
choice.
believe, yeah,
You
I
got,
believe
yeah,
you're a genuine man. I believe I'm a genuine man. We speak from the heart. We speak the truth of what we think is the truth. We cannot be alone. There must be men like us at the top somewhere.
yeah, yeah. But they're there. They're just not able to get to the top because of the Fabian society, because of the left that's into every aspect of our lives now. You know, into the schools, they're into the colleges. You know, when you look at you look at all these counter demos in Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, they're all students, and
Yeah.
they all believe that they're doing the right thing. I was in a pub in Glasgow at the weekend, and I came out for a smoke, and it was quite studenty, and I'm standing listening to these younguns like in their 20s, maybe 25s, talking about Palestine, talking about some something that was going on in the college, and they weren't allowing a Palestinian charity to get involved, and they were just aghast, you know, and they were saying, "Oh, it won't work and it won't go anywhere because how can they not?" You know, and they're totally brainwashed. They totally brainwashed. You know what I mean? Um, and then we've got like so I've seen last year. I seen I think it was Oxford or Cambridge. Do you know whenever they pass the bar, right? You know
Yes.
whenever they get a photograph taken, right?
Yeah.
And you got about maybe 50 to 80 people all in a row, maybe 4 or 5 rows, and I think 80% of them were foreigners.
Yeah.
So
It's the way
that's
they
the
come into the
future.
country. Yeah.
That's the future. That's the if you want to see what the future looks like, look at the college. Look who's passing the bar, because that's your next lawyers, your
Yeah.
judges, and your politicians going
Yeah.
forward.
Absolutely. I think I've said on here many times it might be easy for us to win Parliament, but it's the institutions that really need cleaning out. If you like what they call the deep state or the swamp, call it what you will. Our
Yeah.
education system. Now, this is why I'm not totally in favor of a democracy. I think we need someone strong to turn around and say, right, sack all the educators, sack all these managers, let them
Hmm.
reapply for their jobs. And
Yeah.
if we go back to America, the McCarthy witch hunter trials, I think McCarthy was right. Are you or have you ever been a communist? And we should be asking those questions and
Yeah.
investigating them. And if they are, then they are dismissed. End of story. Pension stripped and sacked from their jobs. How we
Yeah.
go about doing that, I don't know.
Well, listen, Paul, I think it's quite simple. At the end of the day, the schools and the colleges, if not the heartbeat, they're the foundations of our country. They bring in the future, and it should be priority that that is sorted out. we should be. That's the problem. This is what the Fabian Society have done. They know by doing this, by putting indoctrinating our schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and colleges and universities. They know that all they got to do is indoctrinate them and then set them on their way. Plant the seeds, and the plants will
Yeah,
grow. You know what I mean? And they don't need to do much else. So all we got to do is do exactly what they're doing. Go get into our schools, clear out all the ideologies that do not suit us as
yeah,
our society, as our Christian society, has a white society, for want of a better way of saying it, to keep our traditions. And like at the end of the day, it's like a lot of this is the problem we've been having since the 80s with the National Front and the BNP. You're straight away called racist for wanting to protect your own ethnicity, and I think it's time to move on from that. What do you want? Are we just going to give our country over? This is what I say to people. So you're quite happy just giving it over and have a multicultural country that doesn't represent anything to do with England. There's all the traditions are gone. When you look at Bradford and Blackburn, 95% foreigners. There's nothing that represents England. There's no English shops. Everything's in foreign Arabic. The Muslim Brotherhood and near enough every school and every mosque, So as you go forward, you're going to see not only replacement of white people, but you're going to see the replacement of Christians and English people to Islamic people, whether they be from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all one religion. They'll fly under one banner, and that'll be the ISIS flag or the Islamic State flag, whatever you want to call it. And there's no two ways about it. And I've done
well,
videos about it as well, mate. I'll argue with any man about it. They say about, oh, they're not all bad. And this is the problem. I know they're not all bad, but just like in Northern Ireland, mate, we're not all bad. The Protestants community wasn't all bad. The Catholic community wasn't all bad. But the power mildews run amok. They run amok. The power mildews was a very small minority of community, but yet they were able to control each community. If it can happen in Northern Ireland, it can happen in Bradford, it can happen in Rotherham. The Islamic State, it doesn't take many extremists because the moderate Muslims, just like in Gaza, didn't step up against Hamas and said, "No, don't be bringing them hostages from Israel or send them
yeah,
hostages." They stood and clapped and cheered because they were afraid of the extremists. They were
of
afraid, just
course
like
they
we've
were.
seen in history with you see it in Korea with that Kim Jong Sung, and everybody claps like mad because they're terrified. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's where there's any sort of extremism, it doesn't matter how small it is. It's like some of these mosques, and they have control. These moderates aren't going to speak out. They're not going to be spoke. Look at Lubina, right? Now, lovely woman, Pakistani. Not too
yeah,
sure, not sure if she's born in England or not. I think she is, but she sort of speaks up for the right because she's in amongst Islam. She's in amongst these people, the grooming gangs, and she's seen, and she'll tell you herself, they don't speak out. The Pakistani community were silent, and they knew that all these children were being raped in the grooming gangs, the rape gangs. They knew what was going on. Whenever these guys were in court and they were going sentenced to court, their families and friends were shouting abuse at the judges and the prosecution, as if it was their fault and not their family members or friends' fault. So that's moderate Muslims for you, you know,
oh,
and
I,
and it's there. So it's clear to anybody with half a brain that whenever they go, but they're not all bad. The problem is that they don't step up, they don't stand up. I never hear of any Muslims apart from Labuna. This is how we talk about Labuna because she's unique. She's one of the only Pakistani Muslims that you ever hear speaking up against her own community. And
well,
people have got to recognize that.
what you see, Labuna is a different type. There are two types of Pakistani, aren't there? There's the sort of, oh, the educated Pakistanis like Labuna. They come from different areas. I did some research into the different areas of Pakistan and where the different
Yeah, me
provinces are.
too. Me too. Yep. Me too. Yep. I
And
know you can go.
Ben Habib is one of those like Labuna, and then you've got the lower caste, if caste isn't the right word, of the Pakistanis that we have in mainly our cities, and they shouldn't really be confused with the same type of Pakistanis as say Labuna and Ben Habib. Um,
Hmm.
but unfortunately, They don't speak out. They can't speak out. They're too frightened. The people in Ulster couldn't speak out against the IRA or the UVF. But
Exactly.
then again, within the UVF, because I was pro UVF, I support the loyalists. They were doing what they thought was right. They were doing what they thought was right, and perhaps, and I'm not advocating violence because of YouTube. It may come a time that we have to take a leap out of their book and say to the people who won't fight, you must fight to save our country. I've got a
Hmm.
5-year-old granddaughter. I don't want to leave our country for her to grow up in, which is dominated by a foreign, what I call a cult of evilness. Yeah, I don't want it.
Hmm.
I will fight. You will fight, and we might have to say to our fellow citizens, you will fight. You will fight. But that's just me. Freedom, Dad.
So,
I've got to take my wife shopping shortly, and there's no food in the house.
no problem, mate. No problem at all.
Yeah, she frightens me more than the IRA ever did when I was out there.
Yeah, man. I can
Uh,
imagine she's a pretty strong woman. Behind every good man, there's a very strong woman. That's what they say. You know.
she didn't want me to do this again, Freedom Dad. As you know, I've done it back in the past in articles,
Yeah.
but she stands behind me now. I'll be with you
Well,
in a
it's different.
second, love.
It's different, Paul. It's different today. You've got all us. You got me. You've got all us guys in Northern Ireland. You've got all the guys in the chat. You've got Dino Bain. You've got you've got all the YouTubers that support you, Vindicator, and all the rest. Lee Patriot and Thor, Saxon Thor, or Arthur, and many many more. And hopefully Paul Thorpe will become a fan.
Now, wouldn't that be something? I
Yeah, you
I feel
never know.
I feel sorry for Richard Inman. I do. I mean, he's been cast adrift by everyone, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well.
We are coming
No,
together, and
yes. Yes.
we all of us, all the patriotic channels, and across the Irish Sea, in the Republic of Ireland, Ulster, Northern Ireland, Scotland, we are building a network of people, and we will reach the people. And you know what a population is like? They will go with the side that appears to be winning and start listening to people like you, people like me.
Yeah.
I don't care if they listen to me. I want them to listen to people like you, Freedom Dad.
Yeah, and I just want to say before I go that we won't ever forget or forgive what happened to Enoch Powell or what happened to the likes of you and the BNP and the National Front and all the other Britain, all the other guys who, like yourself, has been doing this for a long time, was shut down, went through a really hard time, the death threats, and all the rest, and called a racist and everything. You guys, just like Glenn, who was on my show on my channel earlier, are well ahead of your times, and I wanted to say thank you from me and everybody around me and everybody in the chat. Thank you for being you, doing what you've done for so long, and coming back after everything you've been through. And we won't ever forget or forgive what's happened in the past, mate. I'll give you my word on that. Okay.
Thank you, Freedom Dad. That means a
No
lot.
problem.
I know the Ulster people. They don't forget. I know they still honour the memories of the fallen patriots
Hmm.
from the paramilitaries.
Hmm.
Freedom Dad, please keep yourself safe.
I
I
am.
don't want you to. I don't want you to be a martyr. You'd be a great martyr, but
No,
I don't
yeah.
want you to be one yet.
No, me now.
Yeah. Wait until let someone like me. I'm older than you. Let me be the martyr, okay? Because I haven't got that long left. You
Well,
stay safe,
I'll
Freedom.
I'll be behind your back, peeking over your shoulder. See you later,
Salute
mate.
Freedom,
Take care,
Dad.
guys.
I love you,
Bye
brother.
bye, mate. Bye bye.
Uh, that was Freedom, Dad. He's awesome, isn't he? Absolutely awesome.